see here. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen McKiernan, and I'm president of AccuZip. I would like to first thank you all for taking the time out of your day to join us for this educational outreach effort of ours as a webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on how to submit Edocs, which is the electronic documentation, to the post office. What prompted this is that you all have had the ability to be submitting Edocs, gosh, for several years now using the AccuZip tools. Let's see here. Oops, let me go back here. Boop. All right. Excuse me. Using the AccuZip tool. But the post office did make an announcement that in January 28th, 2024, they are going to be discontinuing hard copy postage statements. So you will need to submit your postal paperwork electronically. Now, it's important to note that AccuZip will still generate the hard copy postage statements. So if you need to print them out, if you need to give them to your clients, we will still generate them as PDFs and as hard copies. So those will not be going away, but it's imperative that you know how to submit your paperwork electronically to the post office. And that's what our two presenters, Jeff Cook and Vince Murdoch, are going to go over. During the, they're going to show you some live demonstrations of the AccuZip software and then the tools that you need to upload those documentations and submit them. A couple housekeeping rules as far as the webinar goes is everybody is in listen only mode. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat box here or the questions box in the webinar. We'll also try to make some time at the end, depending on how far we get along with some Q&As. And then, of course, you can always email us to support@accuzip.com and we'll answer those promptly or go to our live chat. So we'll touch on those. So hold your questions to the end if possible, even in the chat, because we'll likely get to them. But there will be an opportunity for us to address those. We will also be doing some polls during the webinar, so interactive polls. So make sure you go ahead and vote. You'll see some options pop up on your screen. That way it just helps us engage the audience, get a feel for where you're at, and get some information on you all. All right, so up next is going to be what is this webinar going to cover? And it's not necessarily in this order, but we should be touching on all of these points. What is full service? The intelligent mail barcode setup in AccuZip. Pre-sorting for full service, generating tags, reports, and labels that will create the mail.dat files, downloading the MDR client, uploading a job to Postal One, reviewing postage statements on the dashboard, view and printing the electronic confirmation page, and the Postal Wizard Assistant in AccuZip, which will actually be covered when the generating the tags, reports, and labels come up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, before we start the live demo, I'm going to launch our first poll. And the first poll is here, and you all should see this on your screen. And it's, are you submitting your postal paperwork electronically today? So if you are, of course, you'll say yes. If not, that's great that you're in this webinar. You have, we have over 6 months so to prepare. And then I'm not sure. And you can ask us for clarification on that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close, and I'm going to share the results so that the audience and our presenters can see that. And so we've got the majority or no, which makes sense. That's why you're here. You want to learn how to do it, and that's what we're going to show you today. Even if you are here, it's great. It'll be a good review for you, opportunity to ask some questions and kind of see the different options and maybe the latest things of how to submit that paperwork. All right, and I'm going to ask another follow-up question that's related. And it's about, if you are submitting your paperwork electronically, how are you actually submitting it? The two primary options are going to be the Postal Wizard and mail.dat. And again, if you're unfamiliar with either of those terms, don't worry. Vince and Jeff are going to cover those, and we'll explain those two options to you and kind of maybe some of the pros and cons. And it's looking like, all right, we have quite a few people voting. More than half of you are doing Postal Wizard, about 54%, and the other half, a little bit less, are the mail.dat. So let me go ahead and share those results. And again, this just gives us a good idea of where we're at, where our audience is, what our customer partners are doing. Vincent, Jeff, did you see all of those results?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hide that screen now. And without further ado, I am going to pass the screen share over to Jeff. Jeff Cook is a customer care specialist. He can introduce himself, and he's going to be walking you through the first portion, which is the AccuZip portion. So let me go ahead and change the presenter to Jeff. And then once we see his screen, which is right there. Okay, excellent. So Jeff, the floor is all yours.
All right. As Kristen said, my name is Jeff Cook. I am a customer care specialist here at AccuZip. Basically just going to go over the setup and processes that you'll need to do in the AccuZip software to get everything ready for uploading to Postal One, which is essentially what full service is. When they refer to full service, it's the electronic submission of documentation to Postal One, as opposed to bringing in your hard copy paperwork. And again, as Kristen said, AccuZip will still generate those hard copies. So if you need them for your records, if you need them for your customers, we still will generate those. So you can create a PDF, you can print them out. We're not getting rid of them, but the post office is no longer going to be accepting, mailing with hard copy paperwork. Everything is going to be done electronically. And so I'm going to show you how to get that all set up. So as you can see here, I've got our demo file up. I've already gone through the validation process. So at this point, we're essentially ready to go into the pre-sort. The first thing that is very important, you want to make sure that you have the correct service type in your barcodes. And that's done through, there's two methods you can use to get there. You can do this before you even get to the pre-sort setup menu by going to Additions and then AccuTrace and Intelligent Mail Setup. So that brings up this Intelligent Mail Information Setup window. And what you'll want to do is for each of the mail classes, so you can see we've got our first class, periodical, standard, PSVC, which is your bound printed matter, and IMPB, which they don't do on the mail.dat. But what you want to do is make sure that for each of these mail classes, when you click the little plus, it'll expand it and it'll show you your mailer ID, the service type you have. The main service type, you want to make sure that you're using one that is set up for full service. And you can verify that by, if you double click on the little folder icon here. So if you double click, it'll bring up the service type for service type options for that mail class. In this case, the default for first class is going to be 270. The main thing you want to make sure of is that you have a service type selected that says full right here. So this default one is full, so it allows for full service, and it also has IMB tracing. That just means that it is, you can use those barcodes for tracking. It's not, you don't have to do it if you have that IMB tracing selected. You don't have to do the tracking, but it is available. The main thing is you just need to make sure that you have one that is selected that has full. There's a lot of different options here. The majority of these are basically things that you would want to set up with the post office. Like if you're using ACS or something like that, you want to make sure that you are using one that says full in the description. So as long as you have something that says full, it'll be accepted as full service. Again, the default is going to be 270 for your first class, and you can double click on the option that you want to use. So for example, if I was going to use 036, I double click and now you can see that's changed here. But again, the default is going to be 270 for first class, so we can double click, select that. Service type basic is going to be for your non-auto pieces. That one, the default again is 310 for your first class. You don't necessarily need to select full for that, because these are your non-auto pieces that are going to be residual, like leftover pieces that are not part of the full service. You can change this if you wanted to have everything essentially go as full, but we generally don't recommend. Just leave them as the defaults. You could have this at 270 and 310 for your first class. Same thing with standard mail. 271 is the default. You can see it's got the destination confirmed with full in there. So again, as long as you have one that has full in that service type, then that will be accepted for full service. You do want to make sure you do this for every mail class. I recommend doing it for everyone, even if it's one that you don't necessarily do. If you're not doing periodicals or anything like that, it's still a good idea to just have those selected just in case. So let's say, for example, somebody gives you wind up getting a periodical job. You do want to make sure that you're already set up for that and don't wind up going through the whole process, generating your labels, printing everything out, and then realizing that you didn't have a full service type in your barcodes. So it's a good idea to get that all set up beforehand. So once we've got everything set here, you've made any changes that you want, you go ahead and click OK, and it'll ask if you want to save your changes. We hit yes. It takes you right back to the main screen. I said there are two ways to get to that window. Once you're in the pre-sort setup window, you can see there's also a blue link down here. It says Intelligent Mail Setup. You can also get to that same location by just clicking that. So if you don't do the additions, AccuTrace, Intelligent Mail Setup, you can get to it from the pre-sort setup window. The important thing is to just make sure that you have that all set up before you do your actual pre-sort. So once we're in the pre-sort setup here, it is very important. You want to make sure you have print barcodes and full service IMB rates checked. What that full service IMB rates is going to do is that will apply the Intelligent Mail barcode discount to the pieces that actually qualify. So you definitely want to make sure you have that checked because it'll get you that discount. Also, the Zip Plus 4 in here, this will be the same. This is where you're going to be taking your mail. You always want to make sure that you do have your facility where your permit is held, because that's where you're dropping the mail. So you want to put that facility here wherever you're taking the mail. And then, of course, any of your other drop ships or anything that you're setting up in here. But this is very important because this will come into play later when we're doing the mailing statement. I do also recommend hitting this Create Unique checkbox. What that will do is it creates a unique 8-character job ID. The main reason for that is that if you try to submit a job that has the same job ID as another job that you've done within the last 45 days, you'll get an error when you upload. It'll say the job ID already exists, won't allow you to actually do the upload. So if you do this Create Unique, it'll generate this 8-character job ID for you, so you don't have to worry about reusing the same job IDs. So as far as this incentive section, excuse me, this is important because it used to be where on the mailing statement you could just check the box for if it's a political mailing. But now with uploading, when you want to actually add when you want to submit it as a political mail, this will create an additional mail.dat file. It's a mail.ccr file, and that will denote it as a political mail, or if there's an incentive that you're using. The main difference between the two, whether it's an incentive or content, is from this drop down here. So for political or election mail, you want to make sure you choose C for content, and then you can click these 3 dots here to bring up the menu of the different options. PM is for political mail and EM is for election mail. Basically, the big difference, election mail is more informational about where polling places and that sort of thing, whereas political mail would be something that is endorsing a specific candidate. So if it's political mail, then you want to select PM. Election mail, you want to select EM. And you click OK. Now, if it is an incentive that you're claiming, you want to use this drop down and choose I for incentive. And then from here, you would want to choose the specific incentive that you're wanting to claim. So for the informed delivery incentive, for example, you select that, you click OK, and then now you'll see that that's reflected in this window. When you're uploading, any discounts will automatically be applied. But if you want to show that discount on your actual hard copy paperwork, you will want to make sure that you put that percentage in here. So if, for example, if it's the 4%, discount, you want to make sure that you enter that here. Again, it will reflect on the Postal One side when you upload it, but if you want it to show on your paperwork, you do have to put that incentive in here. So just if you're claiming a specific incentive, make sure you find out that percentage first if you want it to show on the paperwork. Making sure, of course, the mailing date is correct, because you want to make sure that that's set up for if you have the wrong mailing date, then if you try to submit the mailing, and then if it's already taken to the post office, or if it's not going to be going for another 2 weeks, you want to make sure that you do have the correct mailing date set here, because then it'll give you, again, issues with the upload. So once you have all that information set up here, we're ready to go ahead and do our pre-sort. And here it's just asking if I want to use the new rates because I have the current update in here. We'll say no because the date is before the 9th. Okay, so now we are on our print pre-sort window. You're going to do everything like you normally would here. We just do our tags. I have it set to create a PDF. If you're using a different type of printer, you can print them out automatically, but I'm just creating a PDF, so I'll print those. Now, the print reports and print labels, it's kind of in this order. I usually would just go print tags, print reports, print labels. However, for the Postal Wizard Assistant specifically, so if we're on this window and we're using this Postal Wizard Assistant, that is going to have our serial number range. So our low serial number and high serial number, those aren't generated until we actually generate the labels. So we want to do print labels next. From here, again, this is however you normally do it. If you are generating your labels as a label format directly out of AccuZip, or if you are exporting as a disk file to use on an inkjet machine or anything like that. The main thing is, so from this disk file menu, when we hit continue, you'll see a little message that pops up right up here in the middle. It says adding IM barcode data. So that right there. What that step is doing is that's actually populating the mail.dat files. It's the mail.pbc file specifically with the barcode information for this mailing. And that has to be done before you can upload. So all these steps, you do need to generate your tags, your reports, and your labels before you actually can do the upload, because all of that information needs to be in there in your mail.dat files prior to uploading. You don't actually have to do your label export at this point, but you can. If you're ready to export your labels for printing, you can totally do that. That's fine. But it's just that adding IM barcode data step that's required, because that's, again, what's populating the mail.dat files. So we'll say that I'm just doing my export, and we don't have to watch the export process because you know how that goes already. So at this point, we've generated our labels. We can close, and then we want to go to print reports. Now on this window here, we have our mailing statement, or we have our required reports selected, of course, qualification report, mailing statement, and cash certificate. The Postal Wizard Assistant as well, since we're going to be showing some of that. You can, of course, have any of these other boxes checked, whatever you'd like for, if you're doing drop shipments, you want your 8125s, you want your packaging report to show, your breakdowns, the pre-sort parameters report, if you want to show the actual pre-sort setup that was used, all that information, that's optional. But the main thing is you do need to make sure that you have these selected. Now, this mailing statement box, directly under here, you see there's this indented box that has a drop-down menu with your different mailing statements. Leave this box unchecked, because when you hit print, it will bring up the mailing statement setup. And so this is where you want to enter the information for the actual mailing, for your paperwork. These boxes across the top, so these three here, they don't actually populate any of the information into the mail.dat files, but if you are generating your hard copy paperwork, you can fill in the information for yourself in the center here and your customer over here on the right. You can fill that information in, and that will generate on the paperwork. So let's say if I just put in AccuZip here, it will show on the hard copy paperwork. As far as for uploading, you do need to make sure that you have your mailer ID in this box here is the mailer ID of preparer. Since you're the one that's generating the e-documentation, you're preparing the mailing. Also your CRID, because you are the preparer and this is your CRID, and Edoc sender CRID. And that is basically saying that you're the person that's going to be submitting the mailing to Postal One. So these two boxes are both going to be your CRID. This box up here is going to be your mailer ID. On the right-hand side is where you're going to have your customer information. So the main thing, the most important thing, is that you have their CRID in this box under CRID of mail owner. You can have their mailer ID. It's not required, but the CRID of mail owner is the most important part. And then again, you can enter their information at the top, and that will show up on the hard copy paperwork. The big difference is if you're doing a nonprofit job, you do need to make sure that you have the nonprofit authorization number in this box at the top, this nonprofit auth no. So nonprofit authorization number needs to go here, and that does have to be linked to their CRID. You can verify that on the Business Customer Gateway to make sure that they have a CRID linked with that nonprofit number. But I'm not really sure why. If you don't have a nonprofit number here, or if you have an incorrect CRID or something that's not linked, the mail.dat files will still show that it uploads, but then when you go to look for it on your dashboard, it won't be there. I don't understand why the post office hasn't generated an error for that. I think it should show an error saying that you're missing a nonprofit number, but for some reason it doesn't. So it's very important that you do have your nonprofit authorization number if you're pre-sorting as nonprofit, and that it is linked with the customer's CRID. The left-hand side can stay blank unless it's a third party where you're doing a mailing on behalf of your customer and they're doing it for someone else. That's a different thing entirely. It's pretty uncommon, but of course, if something like that comes up, you can always contact us through chat or give us a call. We can help you get that set up. So,
Jeff, real quick here, Jeff, I'm
sure.
just going to ask, because we got a couple of these questions in chat, so I thought maybe we could answer them here. About the mail date. You know, what if they don't know the specific mail date when they're actually processing the list? And how close to the actual mail date does it need to be when you are filling this information out?
So the post office, technically, they're supposed to give you 7 days from the submission date. So let's say, for example, I have the mailing date set for today and I go to upload it, but then, you know, we wind up being a day or two behind and it's not going to go in until Friday. They should accept it. But I have talked to many of our customer partners who've said, you know, well, our post office is very strict and super sticklery and they won't allow that, which is weird because it is technically their regulation, but it's very easy to go in and change the mailing date. Even if you have on the pre-sort setup, if you have your mailing date set for today, for example, and then it turns out you've gone through and got everything ready, you've got your pieces printed, but then for some reason it's not going for another 2 days, you can just go into the print reports here and go into change the mailing date right here and regenerate your reports, and that will update the mailing date, and that will update it across all the mail.dat files as well. So that's not, it's super easy to do. You don't need to do a new pre-sort or anything. Just open your existing pre-sort and then go to regenerate your reports and just change the mailing date here. So I could just change this to, you know, let's say it's going to go out on the 7th. I just change it here. And then when I click print, again, it brings up our mailing statement setup. And this should all stay the same because it's, as long as it's the same mailing, it's for the same customer, then all that will be, all that information will still be saved. So yeah, that's technically you do have 7 days, but I generally recommend, you know, it's super easy to just go in and regenerate your paperwork with the correct mailing date, and then you can upload it from there. So another thing that's very important is this move update method. Sorry, hopefully that clears that up. So
I think that was perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. The move update method, normally if you're running NCOA on your file, this is going to auto-populate. A move update method is required for uploading to Postal One. So most of the time, if you're running it through NCOA, it's just going to auto-populate, and it's going to auto-populate the date here. And you can see this is grayed out. I can't actually manipulate or change this because this is the date that NCOA was run on this particular file. If you are doing something that has or current resident or like, our neighbors at so-and-so address, it doesn't actually have names in it, you want to choose alternative address format, and then you can just enter the date that the job is being processed. But you do want to make sure that this is populated with something. So again, if you run NCOA, this will auto-populate and have the date that it was run. But if you're going to be doing a different, current resident or something like that, then you do want to make sure you have alternative address format selected and then just manually enter the date. Before, like I was referring to the content for political mail or election mail, if it is either of those, you want to make sure to check the box here. Again, the mail.dat file is what's most important for uploading as political mail, but you do want to make sure you check this as well. Again, that will reflect on your hard copy paperwork. And then from here, we can just hit continue. We will generate our paperwork. Oh, sorry, actually, no. This is also very important. I almost skipped over this. The permit information. This is going to be your mailing permit number. And then this post office of account zip, that's got to be the post office where the permit is held. So you can see in this case, I have Atascadero, California, 93422, which is set up in the mail drop setup when I did the pre-sort. And then this is, since where that permit is held, we also want to have that same post office here. So in the post office of account zip is going to be the post office, the zip +4, where the permit itself is held. And then this is where your permit number would be. If you're doing a stamp or metered mailing, it would automatically select this if you selected that pay type in the pre-sort setup. So if you selected stamps, this would be reflected. This is where you can enter the value of the stamps. But for imprint, there's no value. It's just going to be obviously the cost of the postage. So your permit information goes here, and then your post office account zip here. For stamps in particular, this would be your stamp permit number, and then the net postage due permit number would be the number of the permit that is covering the difference in postage. So for example, if you only are using these 10-cent stamps, this is going to be the permit that's covering that postage difference per piece. So in this case, we're doing imprint. We've got our permit here, and then the post office account zip. We can go ahead and hit continue. This will generate our paperwork. And then once this is finished, I'll show you real quick the example of the Edocs with that Postal Wizard Assistant and how it has that information in there that's required. So on this screen, most of you, I'm sure, are aware. If not, this link here, this blue link that shows the pre-sort path, if you click that, it'll automatically open your pre-sort folder. So this has all of your information in here. It's got all of your mail.dat files that are generated automatically. At the top here, you can see that CCR file that was generated because I had it set up for political. So, but if you don't have that, that's fine. If it wasn't generated as a political mailing or an incentive, then you won't have this file, and that's totally fine. You'll just have the remaining mail.dat files. So all those will be in here. In our e-documentation, we open this up, and this will have, again, if you had any information entered for your permit holder, mailing agent, mail owner, any of that information, all that will be inside these boxes. But again, it's not required because this information is not in the actual mail.dat files. This is just if you're doing your copies for your own records or for your customers. So, but it's got all the rest of the information for the mailing. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this paperwork here. But now as you scroll down, you see we've got this full service intelligent mail option. So this is all the pieces that qualify and that reflects that discount here. So you can see here's that intelligent mail discount for the pieces that qualified. And then of course our remaining pieces are non-automation pieces that are not getting the discount. If we go down here to our Postal Wizard Assistant, this is going to show information like our permit number, what type of mail it is, and then it's going to show if it was set up for full service. The main thing is on this entry assistant, this is that lowest piece ID and highest piece ID. this is what I was referring to, why you want to generate your labels first, because this is going to actually show you those. The Postal Wizard is going to ask for those. So when it asks for that lowest piece ID and highest piece ID, this is where you'll find that information. And then this is, of course, is our job ID as well. Basically, that should be all that you would need from the Postal Wizard. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Once you've got your paperwork generated, all of your mailed-at files are ready to be uploaded to the MDR client, and I'm going to send it over to Vince, and he's going to be able to tell you how to get that all set up.
Okay, fantastic job. Thank you, Jeff, so much. Let's see here. Okay, so what I am going to do now is I am going to launch another poll question, which is going to lead into what Vince is going to be covering. And so the first poll, or this, I guess, would be our third poll. The question is, have you downloaded the MDR client application? And I know there were some emails kind of going back and forth after the webinar invite and we sent you some instructions on that. We do recognize that the post office's instructions are a little difficult, a nice way to say it. But Vince is going to show you the easy way to do it. So this is it's an imperative step that you take to submit mail.dat files. So let's go ahead and share those results. And 68% of you have not downloaded the MDR client. So that's good. You're going to learn how to do this. And then hopefully, if we have another webinar, it will be 0%. We'll say no, but that's perfect. You're in the right spot. So that's great. And 32% of you have downloaded it. So that's great as well. Again, whether you've launched it or not, it's kind of another story, but we're going to show you how to do that and make it as simple as possible. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide those poll results. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the presenter over to Vince. And he will cover the remainder of the demonstration, more on the postal side. So Vince, it's all yours.
All right. Hello, my name's Vince. So basically, once you finish AccuZip, just like Jeff showed you, you're going to be going to the Business Customer Gateway. Now, we're going to cover downloading it for the first time, basically from scratch, and how to kind of set it up to make it easier for when you need to update it. So first, you sign in, pretty straightforward. Once you do sign in, you could have this electronic data exchange there. That'll bring you right to where we need to go. If you don't, most people have a dashboard under your favorite services over here on the right. So you can just click on dashboard there. And instead of doing anything actually in the dashboard, over here on the left side, you can click electronic data exchange. So what I've seen a lot is this kind of confuses everybody. It says pre-production for mailers, which you would assume, oh, I am a mailer. That's what I want. But what you actually want is this production version. The pre-production is more for testing, just to make sure it's a little bit more in line with the production version than the test environment. So it's just kind of an easy way to see if anything would work. So as far as the production version, there's two versions, either 32 or 64-bit. The 64-bit will work for 64-bit computers. The 32-bit will work for either. So if you're not sure, you can just use the 32-bit. So we'll go ahead and download that. And so that'll take a few seconds to download it. Now, like with any other zip file, we're going to need to extract it once it's done downloading. So hopefully that part didn't go too fast.
No questions on it so far, so.
Okay. So once you get it downloaded.
That's a good explanation of the pre-production. I would not ever use the pre-production.
Yeah, I'll go over how to make sure that you're not using the pre-production, there's another way to test it just to be sure. So once you get it downloaded, you'll want to do this show in folder. Depending on your browser, you might have a different way to do it, but you want to get to your downloads folder. So once you're there, you'll want to extract all. And I'm just going to extract it right into the downloads folder. So that'll make you a new folder there. Now, once you have it extracted, I actually do recommend deleting the zip file. And this will actually make it easier when you go to update it, because the post office just kind of springs it on people when they're going to update the MDR client. So sometimes, it'll be a week, sometimes it'll be a month, and all of a sudden you just will be locked out and you'll have to go download it. So to download the update, it's the same steps as you just did. So once you do that, it will make a new zip folder when you go download it again. And that way, it doesn't change the name. Because if you don't delete it, it'll make a new one that says production, and then it'll have parentheses 1. That'll make things a little bit harder to deal with later. So once you have it extracted, you can open that up. And this run MD client is what you want to open up. Now, if you have extensions hidden, it won't have that .bat at the end. That's fine. If it just says run MD client, that's the one we want. So what you do there, right click on it and choose create shortcut. Now, if you're on Windows 11, you'll have to do right click, more options, and then create shortcut. So once we have our shortcut created, we can just drag it to your desktop and that will open it up. This is why you want to delete your old zip file though, because it always will link to this folder. So when you go to extract the new one, it will just overwrite your existing one instead of making a whole new one. And that way you don't have to make a whole new shortcut. You don't have to mess with folders, and it's just kind of a hassle. So if you do it this way, then you never have to renew your shortcut. You can also rename it. I see a lot where we have it named Postal 1, so you can call it Postal 1. So go ahead and open up that. And now you don't have to do that process every time. That's only when you're downloading it for the first time or doing updates. Any other time, you just double click on your shortcut and it'll open up. So once you're in here, you'll want to log in, and you're going to use the same login information that you have for your business customer gateway. So just getting login information there. So once you sign in, you'll be presented with your kind of dashboard window. Now you want to make sure that your date range over here on the left is set to your to date is at least current. That way you can see any jobs that you have currently submitted here. You'll also notice that it'll have your CRID down here in the bottom. That's going to be the same CRID that you set up in the mailing statement setup window under Edoc sender CRID. If those aren't the same, it won't upload. So once you're here on this window, you want to choose Job Validation Upload here at the top in the red bar and choose Add Jobs. So I just have this test pre-sort folder. It's on the desktop. So we'll just open that up. Now, once you open that up, it will be, the only thing you can choose is that HDR file. So that's how you know you're good to go. You can go ahead and open it. Now, one thing I personally like to do, there's two options for validate and upload after validation. I generally will do validate first, just to make sure that everything is okay. If there's any glaring problems, it will say validate failed here. And when you click on view details, it will show you basically the details of the error, if there is one. So again, it'll bring you back to your home page. You can see your job there, what submission status you have, if it's validated, if it failed, any of that. So then once you're done validating, you can go back up here to Job Validation Upload, choose Add Jobs again. Now, the MDR client will always go back to the last pre-sort folder that you uploaded. or validated. So since I already did this one, you just double click that one and do upload after validation and accept agreement. So assuming there's no issues, it will go through the validation process again, and then it'll go through the upload process. Now, with this system, the longer that takes, the better. Usually if there's a problem, it'll fail right off the bat. But when it takes a little bit of time like it is right now, that usually is a good sign that you're going to be good to go. So we'll just give that a few seconds. And upload complete. So again, you can do view details, but if it's upload complete, you're pretty much good to go. So you can see your job ID here again, upload validation, and what submission status you have. If you click submit again, just to refresh the page, you can see that it's now complete. So once that's uploaded, you can go back to your business customer gateway. So basically you go back to your home screen or open up your home screen if you're not downloading it for the first time or updating, and go to your dashboard. So when you're on this dashboard, you can set your open and end date if you'd like. It's not really necessary, but if you're looking for a specific date range, it does help. But you can just hit search there in the middle if it's for new jobs. So that will bring up your job here on your dashboard. It'll give you your postage totals, any outstanding like your mailer date, any permit information, and you can double check your job ID here just to make sure. Now, one thing you can also do with AccuZip, that is if you have your pre-sort folder open, if you close it, you can go to File, Print Pre-sort, click Open Pre-sort, and I just have it open already, but navigate to your pre-sort folder and open that RTE file. And then you can double check your job ID there against your job ID here to make sure that you did upload the correct job. So once you verify that, click on your postage statement ID. That will bring up this window, and that happens sometimes. It doesn't like having multiple things open, so if you've opened it recently, it will kind of cause issues and log you out. You can usually just go to the Business Customer Gateway again in a different browser, like I'm doing here. Of course, it's taking a second.
It always takes longer when people are watching.
Yeah, I know, right?
Notorious. As Vince is doing that, I'm going to answer just a couple questions. I've been answering them privately, but just so that everybody else can kind of hear the answers. A lot of people are asking if this webinar is going to be recorded. So yes, it is. So if you have to leave early or you're going to go back and need to reference this or need to share it with some of your team members, it's going to be posted onto our webinars page. Also, so if you go to accuzip.com/webinars, we'll get it posted typically within 24 or 48 hours, usually even less than that. You'll also be receiving a follow-up email with the recording. So you will be able to have that to reference. And with that said, looks like Vince has what he needs on his screen.
Yep. All right. So once you click Postage Statement ID, it will bring you to this page. Again, assuming you don't get that error message. So once you're on this page, this will give you a breakdown just like your postage statement from AccuZip. And if there's ever an issue, this is the page that you'd want to send to the support email. But basically, this is going to be a breakdown of all your pieces. It'll have your postage statement again. And again, it pulls all that information for your customer or your information from the CRID. So that's where it's getting all this information. The important part on here is your confirmation page. So once you click on that, it'll bring up this quick little window. This is actually what you're going to bring to the post office instead of all of your other paperwork. This is the only page that you need. So what you do is click on printer friendly version. That will open up your basically printer interface. And from here, you can just print this. So basically all the post office needs is that barcode. It's a good idea to bring this one too. Technically, they only need the barcode. As far as that goes, that's all you really need to do. Now, there is one thing I wanted to touch on real quick, and that is things like Jeff went over the nonprofit error that sometimes comes up. Occasionally, if that happens where it says submission status, you'll see server validation failed. And if you click on your job ID, it'll say something about nonprofit, not authorized, so on and so forth. Or if you need to change your mail date, for instance. So same process, you'd come in here, file, print pre-sort, open up your pre-sort folder. Now, when you're on this window, you can click this cancel and delete file. So what that will do is it'll make two zip files that will just be put right into your pre-sort folder. And when you come to your mail.dat client, you basically want to upload them in the cancel then delete order. And that will actually remove it from the dashboard. So if you ever need to, say you already uploaded the job, the post office isn't having it, you know, they're, oh, we need it today instead of 7 days, whatever the reason, or you see that nonprofit error, you can upload this cancel file and then upload the delete file, and that will actually remove it from the dashboard so that you're free to upload it or get whatever changes made that you need. Once you make those changes, like if it's something simple like the changing the mail date, you can go back to your print reports after you do the cancel and delete files, and then just re-upload the same job. You don't even need to regenerate anything after the paperwork. All you do is change your job by, or sorry, your mail date. Oops, did that wrong. Change your mail date, regenerate your reports, and then go ahead and just re-upload the job. So it's pretty straightforward, but this will allow you to make any necessary changes, or if the post office has a discrepancy, there is a way to kind of undo it just in case. Now, there's a caveat to that if you're seamless, but since it seems like a lot of customer partners aren't doing that necessarily, even doing full service a whole lot, that's not something you necessarily need to worry about right now. So once this says upload completed, you can actually come back to your dashboard and hit search again, and it will show that the job is now gone. So, and then you can just re-upload the same job using the same mail.dat file, and you're good to go. And yeah, that's basically it. So I think we can pass it back to Kristen for questions.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we've got quite a few questions. So let me go ahead and it's going to leave the splash screen up, which is fine. And we'll go through some questions and answers. Actually, I'll show you the little Q&A slide that we have. Great job. All right, so let me see here. Present that. All right, I'm going to change the presenter to me, and I'm going to show my screen and go ahead and present it, and then I'll see if I can see the panel. Okay, good, I can at the same time. Okay, so thank you both, Jeff and Vince. Great job on going over all of that information. Okay, so first question is going to be, do you still have to update your MDR file every 30 days? So Vince, probably have you answer that question.
Well, there's not really a set time frame. It can go past 30 days between updates. Usually they'll do something where, they'll update it pretty regularly if there isn't anything that's glaringly needs to change, like price changes, for instance. But it's not usually on any sort of schedule. It's just kind of when you go to log in, it'll say you need to update the client, and then it'll take you to the dash, like the main business customer gateway page.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, it's not a set every 30 days, but they do update it often. And as you guys have probably noticed, they are making a lot of changes often. So you best to check and make sure you have the most current version, or like Vince said, you'll be prompted. Let's see here. Why are we printing the barcode pages? The post office is getting everything electronically. I think I can answer that. That's just the electronic confirmation page. And that you need to, I believe when you bring it down to the BMEU, they actually scan it. So all of the paperwork and the details and all of that are all uploaded ahead of time, but they simply scan that to take receipt of your actual mailing itself.
Yeah, it's basically just to verify that it's you. That's really it.
Correct. Okay, EDDM paperwork for DDU drops. I'm not sure exactly what that question is. Maybe if you want to further explain that or send that over to support, that might be good. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see here. We have to, do we have to upload, or can we put the numbers in manually?
Oh, yeah, so that's going to be the Postal Wizard. So that's how you would update it manually. I did actually forget to go over that bit. So basically, when you're on your dashboard page, over on the left side where the electronic data exchange is, there's a Postal Wizard box. So you'd click that, and from there, you'd select what type of paperwork you're using, and that's where you would use that Postal Wizard assistant to kind of help you fill in everything. So that's how you would do it manually. Now, it's not as recommended as doing the MDR client, simply because if things change and you get to the post office, they notice something's off, it could cause issues. So doing the MDR client will allow you to just verify everything's good, everything's uploaded, there's no problems. And again, if you have to, say, split the mail file so that, you're, say somebody shorts you pieces, you can just use that cancel and delete file to get it off the dashboard and then re-upload a new job. So it's pretty straightforward, but you can enter it manually using that Postal Wizard and Postal Wizard Assistant.
Okay, good answer. Let's see here. And another question is, if our per piece weight is off slightly, do we need to reprocess and upload the mail.dat?
With letters, most of the time, no. It really depends on how, again, sticklery your post office is. I've heard of scenarios where they, denied an entire pallet because the whole pallet was 0.06 of a pound off, and I've had places accept it with missing an entire pallet. So it kind of depends on your post office. Most of the time for letters, it's not going to matter because they're not based on weight. Flats, unless it passes an ounce line, it's probably not going to matter either. It's more of a judgment call on if your post office would accept it or not. But I would say in most scenarios, you probably wouldn't need to.
Tying on to that, it also can depend on how many pieces. So if you have, say a 1,000-piece mailing and it's off by, a few thousandths of a pound or something, overall, it's not going to make a difference. But if you've got 100,000-piece mailing and it's off by a few thousandths, well, that's going to wind up adding up to a much larger discrepancy. So ideally, you do want to make sure that you have as close to the most accurate weight as possible. But again, it can depend on, just like Vince was saying, it can depend on your facility, but also a big part of it is depending on how many pieces you have, because obviously the more pieces that you have, the larger that discrepancy over the entire mailing is going to be.
Got it. Okay. Let's see, a couple people, and I don't know if this is a unique situation, but I want to address it just because in case it might be something, Vince and Jeff, that you know in general, have their postal wizard option is grayed out. Do you know why that might be?
I've never heard of that before.
Okay.
It might be something where maybe they're not set up for full service in some
That's what I
way
was
that the
thinking.
post office is not allowing it. I've never seen that before, to be honest. So
Okay, so that would be a question to direct that to support@accuzip.com. Okay, let's take about, I think maybe let's do 1 or 2 more questions, and then all of the other questions, we do have them in our Q&A transcript. So what we'll do is we'll send out a whole, to all of you, all of the questions that were asked during the Q&A and the answers that we provided during the live webinar. We'll send out a Q&A PDF so that you have all of that information in writing as well. Okay, let's see here. Let's see here. How does one get a customer's CRID and nonprofit authorization number if the customer doesn't even know it? Where does one go to find them?
So on the business customer gateway, up at the top of, once you're logged in, obviously, up at the top, there's going to be a section called Manage Account. From there, you want to choose Manage Profile. Scroll to the bottom of that and choose the Customer Validation Tool or Get Mids and Crids. So the Get Mids and Crids will get the mids and crids of any customer that you put in their information. The customer validation tool will use that information, like your CRID, for instance, to get stuff like the nonprofit number.
Okay, thank you very much. And let's see here. Are we still able to do, and there's been a couple questions about saturation and EDDM, are we still able to do saturation as hard copies, or do those have to be submitted electronically as well?
So those can be submitted electronically. There isn't a discount for those, so you don't want to do the full service checkbox when you're doing the pre-sort. It just won't do anything. But basically, you can still upload those electronically. I haven't actually seen word on how the post office is going to handle that, though. So it'd be something that you'd want to direct to the post office as far as how they're going to handle anything that can't upload like that. I imagine there's going to be a way, and it might be something where you're going to be directed to the postal wizard to do that. That's the only thing that comes to mind, but I don't know the official word on that from the post office.
Got it. Okay. And let's see here. I'm just kind of scrolling through a few more of these. How do you drop a pre-sorted file over a few days? So we'll make this our last question. We're almost to the hour, but maybe Vince or Jeff, you could answer that question.
Technically, if you're uploading a mailing to Postal One, it's not something you would really be able to separate over a few days like that. The only way to do that, they would, I mean, just the way the post office accepts everything, it would have to be submitted as separate mailings. Now, you can split your list and do it into separate chunks. But, and again, you could have a thing with your facility, like a special arrangement where they'll allow you to upload it and then bring it to them in parts. But generally, from through my experience with most of the customer partners I've spoken with, if you're going to do it that way, they make you split it into separate mailings. They won't allow you to just bring part of the mail over over a few days. It would have to be taken to the facility all together, essentially. So if it's something where it's the mailing's not ready, it's not prepared yet, you would want to wait till everything is prepared and ready to go, and then take it to the facilities.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Okay, if your question didn't get answered during the live webinar, do know that we do have a copy of those. And as I mentioned, those will all get answered and we'll send those out to you. It's important to know too that AccuZip does not charge for these mail.dat files. We were one of the first in the industry when full service became required that we offered it for free. So you have these tools built in to your existing software platform. It's just a matter of getting familiar and educated and how to use them. And again, you have time, so start doing it now. The last thing you want to do is, before you know it, summer's over, holidays come, and then you're slapped in the face with this. So we are still printing out the postage statements. Now, it is not unheard of that the post office will allow extensions or grace periods. Sometimes they put the cart before the horse. We're partners with them, but it's just the reality of it is that, they think, oh, this should be fine. Everyone's already doing full service. Well, or the Edocs. And we clearly know even from these polls that you're not. And so that's okay. I wouldn't count on the grace period. But from a historical perspective, there might be a grace period, well, within, by March 1st, you've got to have it in or something like that. But my recommendation, of course, would be to do it before then. Okay, and then this meeting, like I said, it will be recorded, so we're going to post it to our webinars page, and we'll also post the Q&As to our webinars page as well, and you'll get a copy of the webinar sent to you. If you have any questions, like the previous slide, I should have went over that. You hopefully you already know the support options, but you can email our support, which is fantastic, support@accuzip.com, or go to accuzip.com/support, and you'll see some different options there. Live chat's a fantastic way to get support, email, and of course, you can always call us during our business hours and talk to a live person. So we'd love to talk to you and help you through this as well. So thank you again for attending. I'm going to go ahead and stop the webinar now. I really want to thank Jeff and Vince. They did a fantastic job. I know they're used to talking to all of you individually on a phone call or chat or email basis, but this is the first time they've done it in a group setting. So I was very impressed, and I wanted to personally thank you both and on behalf of the company. So everyone have a great rest of your day and short week with the holiday, and be in touch with us, but rest assured we will be in touch with you as well with the follow-up information.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.